how much more of all these deliverables I can get out of someone working, that 18 to 30-hour range, so I can focus more on growth.
Yeah. I mean, I think so like specifically which parts of the blueprint or like, are you asking my opinion on that?
Yeah. I mean, I would love your opinion on that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say website quality audit. That would still be something. I mean, again, so the website quality audit is pretty sophisticated from a client point of view, right? Like you want to be careful about, we run it for every client no matter what, but I'm always careful about what I present to that client based on what they understand about SEO, right? If we're working with a smaller client, that is on WordPress, just kind of wants us to get them traffic, then we'll send it to them. But we'll also kind of summarize it in that deck and just basically send that to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
More sophisticated client who has like an internal team who would see the value in something like that, then we'll put the emphasis on the spreadsheet, and we'll also like set up a follow-up call to review that with them. Point is with when you're offshoring this is that depending on the level of sophistication of the client, you might want to spend more of your time reviewing it versus letting somebody else do it. So if this is for a small client who you're kind of just trying to check off a technical audit from the project plan, then offshore it, spend an hour reviewing it, send it to them, make the changes and move on. But if it's a more sophisticated client, I mean, we spent upwards of like 2 months sometimes with clients on this report because there's so much that you can get out of it. So that's that. After that, keyword research, definitely work with someone like Rabin to get that done. Same thing with on-page. Trying to think what comes next. Content is another one that you can definitely push to, like for the keyword research, for keyword gap analysis, definitely push that to somebody else. Coming up with content topics, push that to someone else. But again, like kind of the pulling it together in the conversation should be centralized through you. And also the reviewing. Like basically what you need to start getting to is that point with the doers and the reviewers. You can make everyone a doer. Just making sure that you have the bandwidth to make sure that you're going through and actually reviewing the stuff. You obviously don't want to send anything to a client that hasn't been by you, especially if you're just getting started with, pushing off some work to other folks. You really want to make sure that you have a good hold on their capabilities and also working with them and training them too, to make sure that it's done to the specifications that you want.
How about the full technical audit?
So we don't do those anymore. We just use the website quality audit, mainly because we're not working with, we won't sign a client unless they want to pay. Even that, I will never sign a client that is going to require that level of detail of a technical audit. That technical audit, we're playing with getting rid of it or redoing it because we're positioning the website quality audit to be in lieu of a technical audit. That technical audit is really more, I know, remember you said you had an e-commerce client. Like if you're working with like a humongous e-commerce website that has on a legacy CMS, that's like part custom, part, all this other stuff. That's when you want to go into that. I call that like forensic SEO, where you're spending like 20 to 40 hours, like digging into code. That's where that audit might come into play. But aside from that, we're just running website quality audits because it could catch a large majority of the technical issues that a non like huge website would have. But if remember you said you're working with an e-commerce website, you might want to consider that. We've also got a technical SEO checklist that's a little bit more stripped down that you can just go through. That would probably be a better fit. Like the module that we have in there is very sophisticated and advanced. Like I don't even know what he's talking about half the time. He's a good friend of mine, but that's really for like enterprise SEO,
Yeah, his deck was like hundreds of slides.
He's a smart dude.
Yeah.
And he's only working with enterprise clients. Like that's a $20,000 audit that he does. And yeah, it's not necessary. It's a great audit, but it's just not, you just don't need it for like 95% of the web, It's just too much. It's just way too sophisticated. And it's also the insights that you can get from it don't always result in big traffic gains based on what you find, Yeah.
So for the coding is for losers aspect of it, you mentioned they could also run the quality audit as well. And then would it, for the clients that care about it, would it make sense for them to do it and then for me to just review it, or would you still recommend me doing the whole thing top to bottom?
Yeah. So when you say they, it's actually we too. So David and I are partners in Blueprint, and no, that's just for clarification. I don't want you to feel like you're like getting that pushed to another company. So for context too, so for our goal with that, if you're not familiar with BigQuery is basically a cloud processing engine that allows us to run that audit as opposed to like having to set it up and run it and wait for it to process all that stuff. BigQuery will do that, and then it will spit it back. And the BigQuery version is also a lot more advanced. It has better recommendations. It has built like it's a lot of kind of cool like automations built into it. That is great for, so it's cheap. Number one, it's $30 per run per website. And the really cool thing about it too is that it refreshes every month. So what you're getting is you're getting that spreadsheet, but we also built a data studio report that shows you how many errors, what, like picture like a dashboard like you would see in like DeepCrawl or like Sitebulb. That refreshes every month. And it's also, we're trying to make that into like where we really want to go with this in the next couple of years is trying to run all of our SEO campaigns for us and for you guys through that, because it will kind of strip down the need for people. And you can just kind of use that as kind of like your baseline for SEO. It's continuously finding errors, giving you updates on traffic, blah, blah, blah. So that could be something that, yeah, I mean, if that's something you're interested in, like if you don't want to, so basically with that too, you still have to go through and review the recommendations. It will actually spit back auto recommendations, which is amazing, but you still have to go through and review those, and we're continuously refining those. So we can run that for you. It's $30 a month. You don't have to worry about paying somebody to run it for you, but you still want them to probably go through and, review the recommendations made, or you could do that yourself too. But it does save quite a bit of time. Yeah, it's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah. Do you go in every month and make adjustments to the plan based off of that? Or is most of the time it's like, all right, update, everything's still moving along smoothly?
It depends on the scope. So like I said, what we're trying to do now is we're trying to figure out a way that we can build all of our SEO campaigns around what we're building in BigQuery, right? Meaning that our project plan would shift based on what that report says. Or what we're trying to do is we're trying to service the entire market here, because right now we're only working with clients that are like $3,000 and up. But if we're running that report and it's generating good recommendations and it only costs us like $15 as a company to run that, can we offer that as a $500 a month service? And then every time that an issue arises, we go to the client and they're like, hey, you got a bunch of 404s. We can fix that for you. We're $200 an hour. It'll be 2 hours, So that's what we're trying to get it to. But as of right now, the website quality audit is a one and done thing. It's find the issues, get them implemented as quickly as possible, and then move on to the next step. And what we're also using too is, we're selling 12-month contracts. At the end of that 12 months, a big question that I get from people is like, kind of now what? The now what is you rerun the website quality audit. You just basically just kind of flip the campaign over again and start it over. So from a longevity point of view, the website quality audit as we have now is a really good way to extend contracts. You can even do it at the 6-month mark. It's just a really good audit. If also a client is kind of like, hey, what's going on, blah, 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 then you can just run that for them really easily at low cost too. And again, that's why it's awesome having a BigQuery, because it's already done for you. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'll probably go that route then. So as far as the question I've written on the comment that I have like a conference this Sunday with like a small group of dentists that are, I don't know if they're interested or not. I know that a few of him and his friends use SEO agencies. So what do you think is like the most enticing pitch that I have, like 5 or 10 minutes?
To pitch, do you have any relationship with these people or no?
No.
Okay, so and what's the context? You're just kind of like sitting down across the table or what?
So it's a small conference, so I'll have a table set up, they can walk over, but he's giving me like 5 to 10 minutes to speak. So on a stage in front of, I don't know, maybe like 50 or 60 dentists or something like that. So I have a few slides and 5 or 10 minutes. It was the parameters.
Yep. So for the 5 to 10 minutes, I would keep it as value adding as possible, meaning like put together like 3 to 5 like very easy, very simple to comprehend issues that any dentist would be able to comprehend and understand, contextualize, and understand as a value, but also thinking to themselves like, oh, are we doing this? And, asking potentially whoever it is. Again, I don't know dentists very well, how they're set up. I do know that they're not doing their SEO. They're probably like, forwarding that information to like their office manager or something, right? So you want to keep in mind, like, what are the things that I can find, like, that are kind of sexy, that like maybe they heard like a Gary Vee talking about or something like that, that will resonate with them and just kind of like get them to light up and be like, okay, this is interesting. I want to find out more. Right. So I would stay away actually from being like, we like the case study route, like we get results, and I would focus on like, here's 3 things that you can do right now. Go back to your office, talk to your team about fixing your website right now. Right. So like really dig into what those things are. You know, could be things like website navigation setup, like landing page setup. I don't know, whatever it is, right? You can come up with them. Just come up with like 3. Again, like it's actually better to keep it short, like smaller, and like really go deep on those things and like really make sure that you're speaking in a way that they see value in, right? That, again, that's very important. When I was talking before about like understanding the level of sophistication of that client, if you're going to run like a website quality audit and give them all the details, or if you're just going to be like, here's 10 issues that we found, we're going to fix them, that's done, right? I would say they're more on the latter. Like they don't really care about how the sausage is made. They want to see how it's going to impact their practice, right? So I would also format it like in terms of getting more people in the door, right? Not necessarily like growing the organic traffic. You know, just very simple things. And again, do some research, try and find things that like people aren't necessarily talking about, just kind of how you can put your own unique, again, like how can I tell them something? How can I teach them something that they've never heard before that they're going to find interesting, that they're either going to want to talk to me about more. They're going to want to sign up for like an email that I can then send that document. That might be something too. You can tell them, hey, look, I've got this put together in a slide deck. Just write down your email, or like go to this page here to like tell them the URL and have them put in their email so you can send it to them. So that way they can send it to their team. And again, keep in mind too, like the way that contracting process goes, again, it's never going to be the dentist that's going to be like making the decisions. It's always going to probably be the office manager, right? So like you have to catch the dentist's attention, but speak to the office manager, you know, or speak to the decision maker. So that's what I would say. And then if you have a booth in there too, I mean, that's where you definitely want to put together some stuff about yourself, you know, some customers that you've worked with in the past, you know, when they come over to your booth. And again, just kind of like, I think the most powerful thing you can do there is just be conversational and like listen to what they have to say, to what their problems are. It's also really good kind of just recon work for you to understand the industry more. Again, like the process I'm giving you, they're very general. It's for everything, but like you do have to understand how that process can be mapped to your specific niche and industry. So like really understanding like how SEO fits into the dentist picture, you know, and like what are the different levers that you can pull that's going to get their attention? Is it like talking about content? Is it talking about like Google My Business and reviews, or like, you know what I mean? You just got to start to understand that. And the more that you do, it'll get easier and easier and easier as you go forward.
Yep. Great stuff. So as far as the pricing, I know that on our initial call, you had mentioned that I should focus more on like getting testimonials than just straight revenue right now. So would it make sense to cut the pricing model down, or keep it priced the way that you laid it out in that document, even though it's probably pretty high for most of them?
Yeah, I would say adjust. So you're talking about the pricing template that I give in the blueprint at $200 an hour. I would definitely drop that to $200 an hour. So again, this is going to come from understanding a little bit more about your industry. I'm able to raise our prices and lower our hour. Like I have a set number in mind, which is like a minimum of 3,000 a month, right? That 3,000 is just construction of hours times an hourly rate. I have to understand who I'm pitching when it's a fine line to walk, right? Because I could do 10 hours at 200, I could 20 hours at 100, right? I have to be very careful though about which one you choose to go with, because again, understanding who's on the other line. If you're telling them 20 hours, are they going to hold your foot to the fire, right? For those 20 hours? Or are they going to see 200 an hour and get sticker shock and be like, this is just too much for us, you know? So it's a fine line that you have to learn how to walk in terms of like managing what your hourly rate is. And you're able to do it now. You know, there's a module where I talk about how to come up with your hourly pricing. I wouldn't say it applies to you yet because your expenses are so low and you can be just very agile with what you're doing. And keep in mind too, if you're selling somebody who's $15 an hour, then it gives you a lot of wiggle room to work with to lower your prices and not have to worry about your personal time being invested in that. So I would say err on the lower side. I would say like between $75 and $100 an hour would probably be a good place to start. And then you can just maybe pad your hours in places like the website quality audit where they understand that it's going to be a lot of work, but you don't necessarily have to put in those extra hours, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take too much of your time. I think you
Oh,
gave me.
it's yours.
I mean, I think I got pretty much what I needed out of this. I mean, a lot of good takeaways for the conference. I'm gonna go ahead and use you guys for the quality audits. So one of my clients, I think one of the first ones that are still hanging on there is it's only $1,000 a month, so there's not a ton of profit there.
Mhm.
How would you sort of weigh that as far as, and his site is just the quality of the site is not great. So I'm
Mhm.
worried like it'll be hard to ever really get SEO results because
Yeah.
your interface isn't great.
Yeah.
So at what point do you just be like, sorry, I don't think we can help you, or should I just keep plowing forward,
It,
try to
it
minimize
just,
my time working on it?
yeah, it's so number one, that's why hours are so important, because if you're setting a number of hours each month, then they're only going to get that amount, right? So I agree that there's certain websites that you look at, you're like, holy shit, like I'm going to have to gut this whole thing and redo it. He
Yeah.
can't afford that.
Yeah.
That's a conversation you need to have up front to let them know the scope and show them with the hours. And then you have the conversation of, look, if you can only afford to pay $1,000 a month, then we have to stretch this out over 12, and things are going to take time. But if they're not willing to do that, then you just cut them. And that's why, again, like when you go through the sales, you'll understand why I send the pricing before the proposal, because you need to have that conversation so you're not wasting your time. And a lot of the times, if those people do want to work with you, then they're willing to do that. And again, then the expectations are set right then and there that this is going to be a long-term thing, right? And you just have to get good at sales to explain to them that the value of that money over time, and they can compress it, blah, blah, et cetera. So to answer the second part of that question is that it's much easier to deflect those leads when you have more leads coming in. So if you're at a point where you only have a handful, I know I told you to focus on like your service and testimonials and stuff like that, but shit, money's money, so you do want to get it. And it's also good. It's always a similar story that agencies get, like drinking from a fire hose when they have too many clients. But I also think it's a good exercise because stress testing is good. That's when things break, and that's when you can fix things. So I think that, $1,000 is $1,000. You take it and you do the work that you can do for that. That's good for your business. And if they're not okay with that, then they're not a good fit for you, and you're better off anyways, but that's again why hours is so important, because a lot of people are just like, well, they can pay us $1,000. So like, we can do it for $1,000. Right. And then they try and do everything. And then maybe the client leaves and blah, 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 like, cause the expectations were never set up front about the conversation about budget. And so that's why like hours and sticking to that pricing model is so critical, because it'll protect you against having to do too much work that will never get returned. So you should ideally have the same profit level on every client that you work with if you're sticking to those hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What is the typical profit margin for the pricing model?
So typical is very difficult to answer because everyone has different levels of expenses. Ours right now, because we're running so lean, is about 50%. But like, I think for an agency, like when you're kind of running at scale with people in an office and all that shit, like 30% is like a good one to strive for. Some people say upwards of 40, but it just depends. It depends on the people it depends on the clients you're servicing. Like if you're going after dentists, that means that's good from a person point of view, because you won't need to hire like very expensive technical SEOs that will cost you over $100,000 a year. You can do like, more entry level people, train them, pay them 40 to 50 and kind of stack people that way. But then again, the contract sizes are smaller. So it all kind of comes around the end. So when we were running our bigger agency, when we were working with enterprise clients, our average salary in house was like 85 to 90. So our margins were not good. But the contracts were so much bigger that it makes up for it. Your margin's smaller, but the amount of that margin is bigger than, other ways. But it's just something you'll figure out as you go and grow, and you figure out where you want to take your agency,
Yeah. So the margins obviously right now are like 80% or 90%. So since I'm doing a lot of the work, so if I take that money and put it into offshoring some of it, and then I think in the forecast right now. I just made have like $1,200 allocated to growth and reinvestment. So where would you put that money?
Do you have a website yet?
Yeah, it's not great. I just put it up, just to have some presence there.
Yeah, I mean, so what I usually recommend is like investing back into the brand. You know, either content, either like web design, getting a website, getting a brand. Like I'm a big brand person myself. I think it's really important, like getting brand guidelines done, that you can pass to a designer to get a website done. Like these things are all sound investments that you can get done for a couple $1,000 that will pay off in the long term. And if you need designers, I can refer some good designers to you, some cheap ones. Advertising is another really, I'm obviously a big advertiser. But my only concern with telling you to do that is that it's going to make you have to learn a whole new skill set while you're trying to learn one already.
Well, I mean, I got that one. That's
Okay.
my day-to-day job.
So there you go then. I mean, advertising to get more clients, or just like I like to advertise just to kind of build reach and awareness with video, so if you're creating content, you're speaking specifically to dentists, that's another really safe bet. And another one is just kind of like staffing up for the future, like getting people like kind of paying forward your team. That's what we just did with our operations guy. We actually paid him 3 months salary in advance to clear our books from last year because we had so much cash. So he agreed to take 3 months salary in advance. I wouldn't recommend that to people because it's kind of a risk, but he's been working with us for years. So he was willing to do that, but like paying forward, like he is an investment in the future of the company, so using our free cash to like really lock people in is really important, especially for where I'm at with my company and what I want to do and what I don't want to do. So people's another really good investment. That's like the one thing that if you can put together like a really core team, and that's the thing about offshore people too, is it's tough because if you're not giving them full-time work, then they're going to get it elsewhere and they can leave. But if you can make a commitment to being like, and it's not going to cost you much, but to paying them a full salary, a couple thousand a month, 1,000, 2,000, whatever it is, to just lock them there and they work for you full time, you're going to see a massive difference in just, again, the things that you're able to focus your time on, and then the ability to work with them one-on-one and train them, it just goes such a long way. Like a couple of months of that, and you're going to have, I just had a call before this, and forgive me if I'm saying the same thing because these calls kind of run together, but you have a team of like really trained, just SEO killers that are really, really good. Like that's your product, and that's invaluable again, because then you don't have to worry about the service as much. You can just focus on the bigger things and focus on getting clients. All the other million things that you need to do during the daytime. So if you have cash for that, then those would be my like advertising, branding, content, website, and then people. Like any one of those three, you can't go wrong. They're all really good.
I imagine you put the branding first, so people, when you drive people to the website, that is good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I'm not talking shit, but a lot of marketers are bad, just have a bad eye for design. So if you're able to get a good website, like laid out with good design, good content, like you've already got a leg up because so much of the industry is so bad and people don't realize how much you get judged on your website, in the quality. Your website can communicate a lot about the quality of your service just by how it looks and how the content's presented,
Yeah. Can you send me over one of the designers for a website?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Perfect.
I will do that.
I think I got plenty out of this, and I think I can let you go.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Hit me up if you need anything else. We're here.
All right, will do. Thanks so much.
All right, brother. Good luck at the conference.
See ya.
Bye.